potential predator, an enraged father, one family slain, another destroyed in the process. This is the story of Major John Kaler, a man that brutally attacked his neighbors while claiming he was just trying to protect the ones he loved. And yet, the story of Kaler's attack isn't as clear-cut as you might expect. It all started with an accusation that was never proven, but regardless, it led to several innocent people losing their lives. The question we must ask ourselves is this: how far would we go to protect the ones we love? As this story unfolds, we'll attempt to unpack the events that led to Kaler asking himself this question, and finding out that the answer was more violent than he could have ever imagined. 41-year-old Kenna Guardipe lived in the 500 block of West Brown Avenue in Kellogg, Idaho. With a population of just over 2,000 people, this tiny town situated in the scenic Silver Valley of Shoshone County was probably just what Kenna needed, considering how difficult her life had been. She lived in the bottom half of a duplex with her father, 65-year-old Kenneth Guardipe, and her children, Devin and Aiken, who were 18 and 16 years old respectively. Despite what you might think, Devin and Aiken weren't technically part of the Guardipe family. Their family name was listed as Smith, suggesting that their father had been in the picture long enough to give them his own family name. However, he abandoned his family at some point, forcing Kenna to raise the children on her own. According to a statement made by her mother, Jerry Silva, Kenna had basically fallen off the map some months ago. She hadn't heard from her since the beginning of 2023, suggesting that she was running from something, or perhaps someone. Desperate and alone, Kenna eventually made her way back to her father in Kellogg sometime during 2023. Kenneth was more than happy to take his daughter and grandchildren in, but no matter how much he tried, he couldn't make up for the lack of a father figure in Devin and Aiken's lives. Even so, the family got settled in the ground floor apartment. They even formed a respectful relationship with the Kalers, who'd lived in the apartment above for years. The two families shared a backyard, which meant that they interacted quite frequently, and there had never been any signs of tension between them. But underneath the surface, there was a darkness that would burst out so suddenly that it would change the sleepy town forever. Part of it had to do with Devin, who'd had some serious trouble adjusting to society and learning how to behave appropriately around women. But as we'll soon reveal, the perpetrator of this crime had a ticking time bomb of violence within him that was just waiting to go off. Anyone that looked at Major John Kaler could tell that he hadn't exactly lived a normal life. With the word savage tattooed on his forehead, it was clear that he was the sort of man that could snap at any moment. Despite that, there was no indication that he was abusive towards his family. In fact, if appearances are anything to go by, the Kalers seemed to be living a perfectly happy life. Kaler had found himself a job at the local mine, which brought in enough money to support a family of 4. His wife, Kaylee, loved her husband dearly, as did their 3 young children, whose names have been withheld from the public. It's important to note that Kaler had a dark past. His criminal history was by no means spotless, showing a reckless streak that led to him being caught with narcotic substances in his possession at one point. He was able to plead the charges down to a misdemeanor, but the mark on his record, along with his face tattoo, meant that he didn't have many employment options. Born and raised in Shoshone County, Kaler might have made his way to Kellogg because of the local gold mine. It provided well-paying job opportunities to anyone willing to live in such a far-flung locale. And just like Kenna, Kaler probably needed the peace and quiet of Kellogg, Idaho, as he tried to clean himself up. His family was likely his saving grace, and he would have done anything to protect them. Idaho's gun laws allowed anyone to carry a concealed firearm, and that's exactly what Kaler did. He wasn't going to take any chances when it came to protecting his wife and kids, but it was almost like he was looking for an opportunity to use that weapon. Or perhaps his past altercations with the seedier side of life had shown him that nowhere is truly safe. Either way, the fact that Devin Smith lived just downstairs made it all but inevitable that a confrontation would occur. Growing up without a father is never easy, but Devin Smith might have had significant personality issues holding him back. People that knew him say that he struggled with a learning disability, so there's a chance he felt extremely isolated in the small community of Kellogg. His brother Aiken didn't seem to face such problems. By all accounts, he was a well-adjusted member of the community. No one seemed to mind his presence as much as Devon's, but there was a good reason why people were wary of the older brother. No one knows why the boy's father was out of the picture. Considering the social issues Devon experienced, there's a chance that he was extremely abusive. But whatever the case may be, Devon never really learned how to behave around other people, especially women. He also seemed to have an obsessive personality. According to Daisy Sawyer, one of his classmates, Devon frequently harassed her at school. This could have involved anything from stalking to outright sexual advances. The details are unclear, but the point is this. Devon's understanding of consent was dubious at best, and it led to him behaving extremely inappropriately with the people around him. He'd developed a reputation at school for being extremely inappropriate. It's likely that this involved incidents of indecent exposure, since Devon was eventually put into a special program to help troubled teens. The program seems to have worked, since we found photographic evidence of Devon graduating from high school. And yet, his personality issues remained unchecked, and it's possible that his mother and grandfather didn't do enough to hold him back. Considering that the Gardepis had only moved into the bottom floor of the duplex just a few weeks before the incident, they might have had to move because of Devon's behavior. Either way, shortly after graduating, Devon was looking forward to a long summer of relaxation. It's unclear whether he wanted to go to college, and the town of Kellogg didn't offer many prospects to an unadjusted teen with a history of getting handsy with women. In the apartment above, Major John Kaler was on the lookout for even the tiniest hint that his family was unsafe. This made the duplex apartment like a tinderbox just waiting to be set ablaze. And as it turns out, Devon's troubling behavior was the spark that lit the flame, creating a raging inferno that would burn both families down. On June 13, 2023, Kaylee Kaler was in the garden with her young daughters when she saw something horrific. The Gardepis' bathroom had a window that looked out onto the backyard, and in that moment, Kaylee witnessed Devon standing there completely naked with his genitals in his hands. He appeared to be pleasuring himself while looking directly at Kaylee and her daughters, who were all under the age of 10 at the time. This incident left Kaylee feeling understandably shocked, so she immediately told her husband and posted to Facebook about the whole ordeal. The next step was to tell the police, which the Kalers did without delay. They filed a report, prompting authorities to visit the duplex and conduct an investigation. Despite Kaylee's repeated claims that Devon was a child predator, the police apparently didn't find enough evidence to initiate court proceedings. No charges were filed, so the matter didn't really go anywhere. This left Kaler feeling absolutely infuriated. In his view, the police hadn't done their job, and his daughters were being forced to live next door to a dangerous predator. His thoughts strayed to his gun, and how he could use it to end the threat once and for all. On June 15th, the Kaler family celebrated Father's Day. They probably tried their best to act like everything was normal, but the incident must have left a layer of thick tension in the air. Kaler was in a dark mood. He couldn't get over the incident and the threat it implied. In the apartment below, the Gardepis likely didn't celebrate Father's Day at all. There was no father in the picture, and the recent visit from the police had probably left them feeling unsettled. Kenna looked at her boy Devon, thought about the countless times he'd been accused of behaving inappropriately, and felt the need to protect him. Devon didn't have anyone but her, his brother, and the grandfather. Maybe if she'd done something just then, the following event would have played out differently. But unfortunately, no one really did anything to stop what was to come. And 3 days later, the smoldering rage in Kaler's chest finally exploded. On the evening of June 18th, Kaler came back home from a Sunday shift at the mine. The past 5 days had been absolute torture for him. It's difficult to imagine how his thoughts must have turned to the predator living downstairs, a predator that could do anything to his little girls while he was at work. As soon as he got home, he picked up his .45 caliber semi-automatic handgun and attached it to his belt. He then joined his family outside in the garden where that horrific incident had occurred 5 days ago. There's a chance that he brought his gun along in case Devin tried to repeat his past actions, but the 18-year-old neighbor was nowhere to be found. Even so, standing at the scene of the crime must have sent Kaler over the edge, so he decided to take matters into his own hands. He marched over to his neighbors and knocked on the door, prompting Kenna to answer. As soon as he saw her, he launched into an angry rant about how she was protecting a child predator. He brought up the accusations against Devin once again, hoping that his mother would have something to say for him. However, Kenna wasn't about to throw her son under the bus. No matter what he'd done, he was still her son, and she'd do anything she could to protect him. The commotion brought Kenneth to the door, who tried to calm things down, all while pretending like Devin hadn't done anything. According to Kaler, there was no remorse from their side, nor did they offer an apology. They didn't even acknowledge the incident, prompting Kaler to fly into an even bigger rage. And then, the Guardy piece said something that pushed Kaler over the edge. When the perpetrator asked them what they were going to do about Devin, they responded that there wasn't anything they could do. Upon hearing this, Kaler decided that he'd have to be the one to do something about it after all. At 7:20 p.m., the Shoshone County Sheriff's Office received a call from someone living on West Brown Avenue saying they'd heard multiple shots fired. They also said that several people appeared to have been killed.
Within seconds of being on scene, Kaler told him he had just shot his 4 neighbors. Idaho State Police Detective Justin Klitsch also spoke. He told the court he read Kaler his Miranda rights about a minute after they sat down.
Police arrived and saw a gruesome scene. Kenna and Kenneth were both lying dead in the backyard, their bodies riddled with bullets. Realizing that this was just the first piece of the puzzle, police decided to enter the residence where they found 16-year-old Aiken dead of a gunshot wound to the temple. They headed to the bedroom where they found Devin behind the door with several gunshot wounds to his head as well. And somewhere on the scene, they found Kaler, probably covered in blood, with his hands in the air. He wasn't going to deny it. In fact, he outright confessed to having executed the family to take revenge for what happened to his daughters. Based on the evidence found, here's how the incident likely went down. Kaler pulled out his gun and shot Kenna and Kenneth on the steps of their home's rear entrance. Following this, he entered the home where he found Aiken, pressed the gun to his temple, and pulled the trigger. By this point, Devin had likely heard all the explosions coming from downstairs. He knew something was, potentially even that the father of the girls he'd preyed on was here to seek vengeance. Not knowing what to do, he hid behind the door of his bedroom, hoping that the gunman would leave if he couldn't find him. Of course, Kaler wasn't just going to leave. He found Devin cowering behind the door and forced him to his knees. Perhaps he even asked the victim to apologize for what he'd done. But Devin likely only begged for mercy. Unmoved by his tears, Kaler shot him in the head, just like he'd done with the rest of his family. Police found a number of empty shell casings at the scene, indicating that Kaler had emptied and then reloaded his magazine. If the evidence is to be believed, this was not just an act of passion, it was cold, calculated homicide. His wife Kaylee had still been in the garden when the argument erupted. She later reported watching Kenna and Kenneth get gunned down, after which she took her daughters up to their apartment, where she heard further gunshots. Eventually, she claims to have heard her husband talking on the phone and saying that he'd just taken 4 lives. Was Kaler calling the police to confess his crimes? It's likely that he was, since he didn't try to resist when he was taken into custody. The last thing he said to his wife before he was taken away was to tell his daughters that he'd only been trying to protect him. And with that, Kaler was taken into custody and charged with 4 counts of homicide in the 1st degree, plus 1 count of felony burglary. All of Shoshone County was buzzing after this incident. How could someone have done something so terrible? Was there any truth to the claims that Devin was a child predator? This made the court case a highly charged affair, forcing Kaler to wear a bulletproof vest as he appeared before the judge.
He says life in prison with a mandatory minimum of 10 years for each murder count. Because he hasn't waived his right to a speedy trial, it has to start before February 19th.
Presentation of this.
Prior to this, Kaler had admitted to the police that he shot his neighbors dead because he snapped. He acknowledged that there had been a dispute going on, one that had forced him to take extreme measures to protect his family. Given all of this, everyone expected him to plead guilty in court. However, Kaler decided to shock everyone during his first court appearance. Despite his open admission of guilt in front of the police, Kaler pleaded not guilty to all of the charges. It's possible that his lawyer advised him to make this plea, since first-degree homicide is punishable by the death sentence in the state of Idaho. Even so, the evidence against him proved irrefutable. A nearby business owner had set up a surveillance camera in front of his store that captured footage of Kaler gunning his neighbors down. On top of this, he'd shared an image of Leon Gary Plausch, whose son had been abducted at Louisiana Airport and sexually abused. Plausch had taken the life of the perpetrator, and Kaler had posted his picture with the caption, "How to Catch a Predator." This clearly showed that he was on the warpath and believed that slaying Devin was the only way forward. And then came the impact statements from Kenna's relatives, which basically sealed Kaler's fate. Her maternal grandfather, David Silva, said, "He killed an entire branch of our family tree. Never any great-grandchildren to watch grow up. I lost my best friend, Aiken Smith. He spent hundreds of hours volunteering throughout the community, an entire beautiful family taken by one person." Kenneth's brother, Joe, also had this to say, "What a man you are. Not only did you destroy my family, but yours as well," he reportedly said. "You said you were protecting your children. Let me ask you, who's protecting them now?" Joe's statement in particular highlights how Kaler deprived his children of having a father in their lives. In trying to protect them, he ended up destroying their loving home and leaving them with lifelong trauma. On March 25, 2024, Kaler pleaded guilty to reduced charges of homicide in the second degree. While this saved him from the death penalty, Judge Barbara Dugan sentenced him to life in prison, calling his crimes heinous and angrily reprimanding him for his homicidal spree. Kaler is now spending his days at a state correctional facility with no chance of parole. His family are trying to pick up the pieces with a GoFundMe started by Kaylee's brother-in-law, Buddy, but they have a long, hard road ahead. As for the Gardepis, their relatives have to settle for burying the dead and trying their best to move on as the Kellogg community set up a memorial for the deceased.
18-year-old in a neighboring apartment, the one below, was accused of lewd, inappropriate behavior in front of a window in full view of young kids outside. The kid's father, Major John Kaler, is now accused of shooting and killing that teenager and 3 other members of his family. The victims have been identified as Kenna Gordepi, her father Kenneth, and her 2 teenage sons, 18-year-old Devin Smith and 16-year-old Aiken Smith. A family friend says Kenna was a kind, hardworking single mom.
What do you think of this case? Did Major John Kaler go too far, or did he do what was necessary to protect his family? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If you want more videos like this, please be sure to like the video, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you don't miss out on more true crime videos. See you in the next one.